So first of all, thank you everybody for coming here this evening. We have 90 minutes and we're going to talk about the digitalization of the waste and recycling industry. So first of all, I'd like to quickly go through the agenda. I'm going to give a quick introduction to the panel here. Then we're going to cover City of Phoenix digitalization, led by Lisa, Dominic and Tim. And then the City of Atlanta and Rubicon, led by Stephanie and Michael. And WM and Smart Technology is going to be led by Mark. So a quick introduction. My name is Jimmy Martin. I'm the CEO of AMCS Group. I started AMCS back in 2004 and we are headquartered out of Ireland and we supply software technology to waste and recycling industry across 22 countries around the world. And we have 9 offices across various locations. So we're fully focused on supplying software and technology into the waste and recycling industry. So, Lisa, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself just as we sit down for 2 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Lisa Faison. I'm with City of Phoenix. I'm a lead business systems analyst there, and I focus on mostly data and automation and application support.
I'm Dominic Papa. I'm the Executive Director for the Institute for Digital Progress. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's geared towards driving smart city and IoT technology in the Phoenix region.
I'm Tim Lake. I'm with Cisco Systems. I'm a regional manager for the Southwest Leon government practice and focus a lot on the smart city space.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Stuckey with the City of Atlanta. My position is Chief Resilience Officer, which is part of the 100 Resilient Cities program pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation. Are any of y'all familiar with that program? 100 Resilient Cities? Yay, a few hands. So that program selects, as the name suggests, 100 cities globally, spanning 6 continents, that work on making cities more resilient to the impacts of climate change, which includes a lot of innovative technology. My office includes the Office of Sustainability. And my previous position with City of Atlanta was Director of Sustainability. So we oversee all environmental and sustainability initiatives for Atlanta.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Allegretti with Rubicon Global. I'm the head of public policy, and what that means is I work to develop partnerships with cities around using our technology to improve the efficiency and operations of the departments of public works, but also to help provide data for sustainability and resilience planning. And I'll talk about that a bit later.
Hi, my name's Mark Madsen. I am Vice President of IT at Waste Management. My team oversees our mobile initiatives, including deploying Internet of Things technologies to the trucks and to the landfills that we have. Thank you.
So as you can see, we have a very varied panel here with a lot of experience. So what we're going to do at the end of the session is leave 20 minutes for questions and answers. So please, if you can hold for questions and answers towards the end. So I'm just going to set the scene with a few slides. First of all, I suppose most people here are in the waste and recycling industry. It's an old traditional industry, but going through huge change, I think, particularly over the last 10 years. One of the key trends we're seeing is, first of all, there's not enough money spent on technology in the industries, particularly IT technology in the industry. It's less than 1%. It's probably one of the lowest spend rates for such a complex industry in the world. And we think that's going to go through a massive change over the next 5 to 10 years. It's also quite a complex industry. You know, it's revenue of over 1 trillion and over 4 billion tons of material being handled on a yearly basis. But it's moving towards a massive transition driven by, I would say, 3 macro trends. One, the new millennials. That's the change in population and what they expect, and that technology-driven workforce, the circular economy, and overall technology trends out there. So, you know, the new millennials, their age bracket 18 to 34. They make up over 24% of the population of the US. 30% of them live at home with their parents. 50% of them drop in the number of married since 1960. They don't get married. Means they're driving the sharing economy. So it's all about access, not ownership. They're less brand aware, more cost conscious, more connected through social media, and wellness in daily activity is a constant pursuit. So the way the new millennials interact with systems and with services is completely different. And we've seen Uber, we've seen all these new technologies come through and been driven by that change. And I think that is something that the waste and recycling industry has to be aware of. The circular economy, we all are, that's what we're about. Again, the industry has gone through massive transformation over the last 10 years, and I believe it's going to go through every bit as much in the next 10 years. The industry is going to become a manufacturing industry. It's going to be about circular economy, about changing from it being a resource and reuse of that resource. And that means our customers have to be a lot more connected. It means our every operator has to be a lot more connected to allow us share data in a proper way so we can reuse and remanufacture and drive recycling to where it needs to be. You have technology trends, and this is something that I think really we have to become aware of. Mobile internet is going to drive over 11 billion or 11 trillion over the next 10 years. Automation of the knowledge workforce, that's a huge trend that is going to drive changes over the next 10 years. And I think in the waste industry, that's a very important trend. That means autonomous trucks, it means call centres, automation of call centres, automation of how we interact with our customers. And again, a massive trend and a massive change for the industry. Internet of Things, again, the top three all directly affect this industry and mean huge change in the way we drive forward as we do business in the future. So that's me setting the scene. In summary, how we all do business and interact with one another is going through seismic changes. It's imperative the business to adapt quickly to the changes. Technology is a key enabler to do that, and I think it's imperative for the industry to embrace technology rather than let us pass it by or ignore what's happening out there. Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here today. I know it's been a late afternoon. You're probably full of everything out there, and we're hoping you're just going to be amazed by the information that we have to explain today and see how you can help change the industry. Again, I'm Lisa Faison from City of Phoenix, and I'm here to talk to you about our digitalization. Ooh, can't say that twice. Anyway, so really what we want to talk about is collecting data. Why is it important that you need to collect data? Data helps you in so many ways. I sat in a panel yesterday talking about big data and smart waste and really how data can or cannot change the waste industry. And I think from the City of Phoenix that we've really shown that we can change the industry in multiple ways. One, making better business decisions, being able to help with those operational costs, but more so trying to really engage our community. And that's what you're going to hear today about the City of Phoenix and our panel and some of the events that we've been going on with. So we started first, probably about the last 5 years, really focusing on what's the right data to gather. And then we realized we had some problems that we needed to solve, and we don't really always have the expertise to solve those problems. So we wanted to engage our communities and our innovators, and the City of Phoenix has really become a hub of some of that innovation. So we realized we needed to adjust our data. We needed to refine it and become more specific in the type of data that we wanted to collect and be able to make available to those innovators to help us solve our problems. Because in the City of Phoenix, we really don't call them problems anymore. We call them gold opportunities. And so it becomes interesting when you start to dive into the level of data that is needed to help solve problems and host events. And lastly, you want to make sure you grab data that's going to tell the story that is the problem you're trying to solve. What you don't want to do is grab data that has no meaningfulness to those individuals that are helping you solve problems. So in City, we've begun to host hackathons. Does anybody know what hackathons are? Yep. So usually everybody takes that with a negative view or lens saying, why would we do a hackathon? We don't want people hacking our system. But really, it's the good of the order of saying, hey, we know that you guys know how to get into systems in every possible way. Tell us how we use that data to change the industry we're in and improve it, and then really meet our goals. So in City of Phoenix, we have some pretty strong goals. I'm sure amongst all of you, you have goals as well. But we're trying to divert 40% of our waste stream by the the year 2020, and right after that, jump right into a zero waste goal by the year 2050. Those are things that is very difficult to move the needle. So we are engaging our community, our leaders in the community, and our residents to change behavior, because that's really what we have to do, is change behavior. So in order to do that, we needed to engage our community and our leaders and solve our problems. So we began with a few problem statements. We realized what some of our highest operational costs were. We focused data that would support or show how our operational costs are trending higher than normal. Even though our population has been growing, our waste stream has been growing, we haven't had as many new home buildings and so forth, so it was hard for us to justify why we needed more resources. So first we have to figure out, can we do better with the resources we had? Then you really need to be able to, along with that problem statement, tell what that optimal solution is going to look like. What would success be if we solved that problem? And then make sure that your data supports that. So be able to measure a benchmark and be able to come back and show, okay, we've solved this problem, we've implemented solutions with the recommendations of our community leaders and innovators, and now this is what we were able to accomplish or achieve. So that brings us to our Cisco IoT Challenge. Just this past February, we started off a challenge with the help of my partners who will explain a little bit about their involvement with this challenge. We basically put 3 problem statements out. So for us, in the world of lean, we realized a lot of our waste or our high operational costs came with sending back a truck to the same exact place we collected last week or yesterday. So how can we improve that? How can we reduce or be proactive in our miscollection calls? One of the other problem statements we had was, obviously getting to our waste diversion goals. We also wanted to make it fun, because we realized waste truck drivers, they're like the kids' goal of seeing somebody that comes by every day with this big, huge, massive truck. So we wanted to put some gamification into that as well. So we wanted our problem to actually be something that is engaging our residents, educational, and fun for the kids. So with the challenge, we actually co-worked with Arizona's Institute for Digital Progress and Cisco. It awarded some prize money to the winner, as well as a pilot project. And what we did is we awarded at the end of this session a pilot project, and it was a $20,000 prize winning to a group called Authority. And so basically what they're going to do is they're going to integrate some of our technology that we already have on our trucks, integrate technology in other applications that support our customers, and then be able to put that into a mobile application or a web application that would engage our leaders as well as our residents. So their solution offered the ability to communicate proactively to our residents about trash collection. So we would proactively send an alert out the night before saying, hey, your trash is going to be collected tomorrow. Don't forget to put your container out. Give them information about what goes in that container, or how the container needs to be placed at the curb or near the curb. It'll also give them a heads up based on our GPS location that says, hey, we're just down the street. You got about 30 minutes before our truck comes by to collect. And the intent of that is to really engage that resident or our customers and let them know that they take part in our collection process. So if they do need to call in for a miscollection, the idea is they knowingly know that they did not put their container out there in time. In addition, this really helps us create out of the box, or thinking outside of the box, and then promoting transparency in government sector, which is not common. So a lot of the times government they don't want to put their data out there. They don't want you to know all the details behind their collection activities. In city, we actually see, nope, let's put all of our data out there. Let them see the things that we're unable to see. With the city of Phoenix having almost 400,000 residents or clients, then it's hard for us to find the needle in the haystacks. It's hard for us to see what might be obvious to somebody else. With that, I'm going to turn over to Dominic.
Thanks, Lisa.
As I mentioned earlier, my name is Dominic Papa. I'm the Executive Director for the Arizona Institute for Digital Progress, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how we're transforming cities in Arizona into lean startups, allowing them to launch innovative technology pilots, such as the one with the Public Works Department. So I actually came from the city of Phoenix. I was a policy advisor for one of the city councilmen, and what we noticed is that as a city, we faced insurmountable challenges. And normally how we would innovate is we would pose an issue out, and then companies would come to us trying to sell us their solutions. The problem with that model is that a lot of these solutions were one-size-fits-all solutions off the shelf. And while those solutions would be great, they normally did not match our city or our community's needs. So the question we asked ourselves is, how could we develop a platform that would start to allow cities to create customized technology solutions to match their specific issues and to match the community's specific needs? And our answer was the Arizona Institute for Digital Progress, and what we're calling a public-private nonprofit technology model, and in particularly our new innovation as a service model. And so what we actually do, let me speed through this, is now the city of Phoenix, it has an issue. They present that issue to the nonprofit. The nonprofit works together with the private sector, academic institutions, and other anchor institutions such as hospitals and other research facilities. We bring them together through a process of multi-party innovation to form new partnerships to create customized technology solutions to match those needs. And what's really revolutionary about this is that because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, we're able to develop a lean funding model that allows the cities to develop these pilot projects at no cost to the city. It's actually underwritten by a lot of the private sector, or it's funded through grants. So basically what this process does is it allows the city to have a nonprofit R&D arm that allows them to test pilot technology solutions before having to put an RFP out in order to spend a lot of money to procure those solutions that might not work. And so it's a very interesting model that seems to be working tremendously because, one, it's allowing the private sector new opportunities for business development to see some of the new issues that these cities are presenting to them. And it's a win for the public sector because, again, they get to test some of these solutions before they spend the money to purchase them. And so I'm excited to be here not only to spread this innovation as a service model throughout Arizona, but potentially help some of you in the private sector work with cities in your own states, in your own regions. So if you have any questions, please find me after. But it's definitely a new model that seems to be working throughout Arizona. So with that, I'll bring up Tim and Cisco.
I want to go back to this just quickly, because for those of you that are in government in the audience, in fact, let's poll. How many of you are with a public sector entity versus private? Public, and then with the private sector. All right, so we've got about a split room here. I'm with the public sector, or private sector. I'm with Cisco Systems, and I will tell you from our perspective, having a group like Arizona IDP to work with causes us to invest more in the city of Phoenix. So I would encourage those of you in the private sector to seek these kinds of organizations out, and in the public sector to look at their model very closely and see how you can implement it there, because it's really gotten our attention for Phoenix. And Phoenix, for those of you who don't know, has a rich developer community. A lot of companies coming in, a lot of investment in coding and training developers, and the leadership, political leadership in the city and surrounding areas is also very supportive of innovative work. So that's where we kind of got involved with the city of Phoenix, and we're excited to work with them on some IoT and smart city initiatives. And so this is the first time I think Cisco's ever been at this conference, and I have to say it's been eye-opening. But does everyone in the room know what IoT is? Raise your hand if you know what IoT is. Okay, so pretty good group. And if we were in a smaller room, I would ask you each for your definitions, and they would be different, and they would all be correct, because IoT seems to be whatever we want it to be. But I've got this specific definition here. The Internet of Things is the intelligent connectivity of physical devices driving massive gains in efficiency, business growth, and quality of life. So that's wonderful, but how do we get there? And Cisco has taken the Internet of Things and wrapped it into something larger called the Internet of Everything, not just because we want to have our own name for something. But the Internet of Everything really takes into account the things that you're probably thinking about on IoT, which is sensors on the trucks, security cameras on light poles, air quality sensors, vibration sensors, all of these sensors, millions and millions of sensors that are costing that are dropping in cost and showing up everywhere. That's the things, and they provide data and information. But we have to take into account that this is a huge amount of data coming into us, and we have to sort through it intelligently in order to impact the processes that are a part of our cities, in this case waste collection, and then help the people, whether they're the clients, citizens, our employees, or just general community members, realize the benefits of IOE and all of this sensors and data that are going out there. And I do want to draw your attention to the fact that anytime you're putting thousands of sensors around, you need to have a good security plan, and we could spend hours talking about security and IoT and in IT in general. But just know that if you start throwing sensors out there, make sure you've got a great security plan, because a lot of the great hacks you've seen in the news lately have come from IoT initiatives. So I don't want to scare you, and we don't have time to go into all that type of discussion, but definitely make it a part of your planning process if you're looking at IoT. And one of the things we see is that there are silos in cities, and you don't want to call them silos. That's offensive. We'll call them individual cylinders of excellence, so we're not offending anyone. But each of these individual cylinders of excellence typically may not talk to each other. Traffic management, public safety, city lighting, population environment, waste management, parking and optimization. These are the areas that we're focusing on for our smart cities and IoT initiatives. And when we went with Arizona IDP to the city and said, hey, we'd like to help solve problems. We're going to throw some prize money behind it. Let's access these developers. Of all of these silos, waste management was probably one that was the least clear to us. And of course, they were the department that was the most innovative and wanted to take advantage of it, which is great, because to my knowledge, it's not been a focus area for us in a situation like this. I mean, city lighting, public safety, traffic management, those are all things that you experience every day and you can see, and technology nerds like me can see and understand and attack. So this was a very interesting initiative from the Public Works Department, facing some really impressive challenges and goals to divert all of that waste, and to see the Phoenix developer community come together and do that was outstanding. But what we're doing with Public Works, a lot of the sensors and items that are out there can benefit public safety, pollution, environment, parking optimization. You've got trucks crisscrossing every corner of the city that are going to have sensors on them that can alert you to other issues that are out there. Air quality, debris in the road, potholes, all these sensors provide data that we can extract and help these other city departments, just like putting smart lighting up or having cameras up in high-risk areas provide ability to feedback info back to waste management for big events and things that we may need to adjust routes for. So what I would encourage you in the public sector space is really have one IoT strategy across the different departments. And I do think Public Works has those really meaningful applications that are critical to the city, and Public Works can definitely lead the way. And just to demonstrate and quantify the value of this, over the next, up until 2023, we estimate the potential value of this to the world at $19 trillion. The lion's share of that, $14.4 trillion in the private sector. One of my colleagues, I believe, is going to speak a little bit more about that. And then $4.6 trillion in the public sector. And this is across things like waste management and public works, but to all areas of our economy, basically making things more efficient and improving the quality of lives of everyone who lives here. So that's where I'll end, but it's absolutely huge. And if you're not investing in it as a private sector, you're not looking into it as a private sector, it's the biggest technology inflection we've seen. And so definitely look into it. Be happy to talk to you afterwards. And then in the public sector, it represents a huge opportunity to really visibly change the experience for your citizens and clients. And I'll reiterate to always have a great security plan when you go after this. Thank you.
So good afternoon. Just to repeat again, I'm Stephanie Stuckey, and I'm with the Mayor's Office, City of Atlanta. I head up our resilience efforts. And it's really fascinating listening to what Arizona has been doing because it's extremely similar to what we're doing in Atlanta as part of the Rockefeller Global 100 Resilient Cities program. And I think my slides, wait, I somehow skipped to Rubicon Global. How did that work? There I am. Okay, sorry about that. So this tells a little bit about the program. It was founded in 2013 by then president of the Rockefeller Foundation, Judith Rodin, and it's really a continuation of the Rockefeller Foundation's longstanding commitment to cities. They've made a $100 million investment in 100 cities globally that are innovative incubators for change. And we're partnering with private companies that are leveraging an additional $200 million, which is what it's currently at, but that's growing every month as we increase our partnerships. So the model is very similar to what Phoenix is doing on a micro scale, and this is on a global scale. What Rockefeller does is each individual city has a person with a position like mine, Chief Resilience Officer. We're embedded at City Hall. They make sure that the position is senior level, reporting directly to the mayor. So it's a position that really can influence how things work at City Hall. And we're to identify what are our key problems and challenges. We hone in on 3 to 5 major challenges. And then we seek partnerships with the private sector that Rockefeller has already established. And they help us solve those problems free of charge, piloted. I would say the one distinction is that this is global, and the cities also network and share best practices. And we have summits and convenings where you have cities that are working on particular areas that get together and exchange best practices along with industry professionals. I'll give you a concrete example. This time next week, I'll actually be in Bellagio, Italy, at a tech summit that Rockefeller is convening, and it will be 5 cities in the network. Each city brings their chief resilience officer, their mayor, and 1 tech industry leader. And then they're also pairing us with more tech industry leaders and financial investors in tech and cities. And we're going to spend 5 days in Bellagio sequestered where we're going to be talking through what our major challenges are. So there's that added layer in addition to the public-private partnerships that Rockefeller facilitates where they have these convenings based on particular issues. Another convening they did was addressing flooding, and they had 5 or 6 cities that was a priority of theirs, and they convened in Rotterdam. So it's really a powerful program. It's still very much in its infancy, but the key to the program is successful public-private partnerships. And I absolutely love the phrase, individual cylinders of excellence, not silos. I'm gonna steal that, if you don't mind. And it's about breaking across the silos that traditionally make it hard to do business in city government. So let me just hone in particularly on our waste and recycling challenges. We need to increase our participation rate. We're currently at about 30 to 40%, and a lot of it does have to do with behavior change. But until we can really get at that behavior change, we have to understand the data, and we're lacking in that basic information about contamination rates and which homes are recycling, which aren't, so we know who needs to be targeted. Atlanta, we have about 96,000 homes that we collect recycling for. We do single-family homes, and we do small multifamily units, 4 units or smaller. We don't do commercial. We don't do multifamily housing. And our population is similar to Phoenix. We're at 463,000. We're hoping to get to 500,000 by year's end. So we have an ambitious goal, 90% by 2020. The mayor has said that repeatedly, so by gum, we're going to get to that. But we can't get to that until we make some radical changes. And therein comes our collaboration with Rubicon. So we hooked up with Rubicon earlier this year. We kicked off our partnership in January. They're an Atlanta-based company, so we're very proud of that, but they are national and global, hence the name and their scope. and they're partnering with more cities. We're the first city that they partnered with. It's a 6-month partnership. I've got Michael Allegretti here with me, and so I'm really going to let him hone in on the specifics of the program. Since he's with Rubicon, he can speak better to it. But their technology is a mobile app that connects to the vehicles and helps us really track waste diversion rates and also routing. And we're about 5 months into the program. We've got a little over a month left. And pretty soon we'll be at a point where we can start analyzing the data and figuring out what our next steps are. And our recycling coordinator insisted that I put in at least one slide that shows that we are already looking at some education initiatives. But they're really not fully employed at this point because we're waiting for the data to come in. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Allegretti, who's with Rubicon Global and has been very much our partner in our initiative.
Rewinding. Hi. Well, thank you, Stephanie. So I'm Mike Allegretti with Rubicon Global, and as Stephanie said, we're very proud to be a partner with the City of Atlanta, and it was great to hear from the City of Phoenix and the great work that they're doing as well. A lot of similarities between the two cities. In my time, I'm going to briefly tell you what the heck Rubicon Global is. It can sound like a spy agency to those who aren't familiar with our company. What our product for government is, so a quick walk through the tech. People love pictures. They speak 1,000 words. So I'll show you some shots of the app and then hone in on the partnership. And then pull out on what I think it means for the industry at large, because that's probably the more interesting part of my talk. So Rubicon Global, we've been around since 2008. You can see that slide. We're a cloud-based platform. Essentially, we're a tech company. We don't own landfills. We don't have trucks. We don't have men and women slinging the trash. What we do is orient the assets of the industry, whether they're hard assets or human assets, towards keeping materials out of landfills. We're a B Corp. So it's in our DNA. That means that we strive to earn a profit, as everyone in the private sector does, but we also strive to solve a policy goal. And for us, that's the end of landfills over the course of generations. We do that through 3 mechanisms. Free market competition, working with over 5,000 independent haulers across the country, many of which are, of course, at this conference. With those haulers, we basically access accounts for them, new business that they wouldn't have. They compete on price and service. But then what distinguishes us from others in the industry is our technology. We apply technology, data, transparency to do 2 things: to help those independent haulers run more efficient and effective operations, but also to help understand waste streams better so that we can reuse more materials and keep them out of landfills. With that as a setup, why are we here talking about cities? Well, as we've gotten to know the tech over the course of the years since we've been in business and improved upon it, we said this tech could be used to help cities as well, not just independent haulers. And that's when we went to the City of Atlanta and said, we'd like to put our tech in your trucks to help run a better Department of Public Works and see where that might take us. It did start, admittedly, as a bit of an experiment. So that's a bit about our business model. I think I talked through that. Again, diverting from landfills, tech, data, and transparency. So what is Rubicon for government? And I think, the sequencing of how we spoke made a lot of sense today, because we aim to essentially bring together a lot of the pieces that were presented. Our product brings the Department of Public Works and the Department of Sustainability, or in Stephanie's case, Resilience, together. So again, these what were they, of excellence? Yeah, gosh, that's so good. I don't know what the acronym is. These individual cylinders of excellence. You can bring them together through technology, and that could be very powerful. So that's what we're striving to do: help Public Works provide more efficient and effective customer service, have government go from being reactive to a citizen calling to being responsive to a citizen and actually anticipating their needs. And on the policy side, with sustainability, helping a city go from good to great, to achieve those zero waste goals and not have them simply be some figment of the future, but actually something that you see progress working towards. So a quick overview of the technology. How many people have taken Uber? Come on. All right. If your hands were down, I'd know you were sleeping. Like Uber, we have an app that sits on the dashboard of the truck. That's the driver app. It's out there collecting lots of information about the service that's being provided, but also about the waste streams. And then there's a supervisor portal, a way of saying a proprietary website that is controlled by the city. So whether it's someone in the Department of Public Works who oversees the fleet, or someone in the sustainability office who's trying to look at, how much recycling is coming in, what's the diversion rate looking like today. So just some screenshots. Safety, that's the main thing in this industry must always be the safety of drivers. And Uber learned this the hard way with their app. It took them years to figure out that the app had to be minimal touch. We started with that premise because we developed it through the eyes of the driver. So our app is minimal touch. You log in the morning as a driver, you do your pre-check and then your post-check at the end. This is moving a whole aspect of a city department away from paper, away from clipboards, onto Excel spreadsheets that can be tracked for progress. This is the big part of the app, which I'll come back to, the tracking of exceptions. And I'll talk about this when we talk about the future of the industry. This is the one part of the route. If you're imagining the driver out during the day doing the route, service is confirmed automatically. It's a no-touch process. The one time they interact with the app is to note exceptions along the route. The bin isn't out. The recycling is contaminated. The bin is blocked by some obstruction. They would touch one of those boxes, and then they'd even have an option to take a picture of the incident. All that information being fed back to the portal, all that information being stored, all that information being available to be analyzed by the city for future purposes. And you'll notice that little corner bottom right that says Other. That's actually really important. Disposal site, no more driving around the scale house. Let's acknowledge what does sometimes happen. Loads are sometimes missed. Geofences make that an issue of the past. The truck enters a certain geographic area. It's noted that it's at a disposal site, and therefore there are no missed loads at the landfill or the recycling center. The weight ticket is inputted manually or with a photograph. That's a shot of the portal. There you see breadcrumb trails in that little box. If you can't read it, that's one of the exceptions. It basically says at this address, the bin wasn't out that day. And there's a photo. So Stephanie touched on the partnership. Our technology is in every truck, recycling, yard waste, and municipal solid waste. It's about 55 trucks servicing 96,000 households. And we're collecting lots of data. And I said that, the exceptions are an important part because the exceptions are kind of the ball game, right? It's good to know that service is confirmed, and we do that down to the second, and we do that through about 13, 14 different triggers. So gone are the days of somebody, saying, all right, we hit this address, we hit this address. It's through GPS, it's through the shaking of the truck, change in vibrations, all these things. But the exceptions are interesting because we start to learn about a community when we learn about deviations from the norm. So I don't know, Stephanie, if you know this, but a driver in Atlanta came back one day and she was kind of annoyed. She said, I don't know why you have me hitting this button every time the trash isn't out at one of these houses. She said, no one lives there anyway. And a light bulb went off. We said, well, wait a minute. If no one lives there, you're not actually tracking that the bin isn't out. You're tracking abandoned or vacant properties in the city of Atlanta on a weekly basis. It's machine power, it's technology overlaid with human intelligence. So that got us thinking to the presentation that was made by Cisco. We have these roving data centers, the garbage truck, the only vehicle that goes up and down every single street of every single city at least once a week. And we haven't tapped it at all. We've always, as an industry, been looking inward. And for good reason. We've been focusing on driver safety. We've been focusing on the performance of the industry's service towards citizens, right? Cameras and various safety mechanisms. But what if we looked out? What if we added to trucks 3D mapping capabilities and provided cities with updated topographical maps of their city on a weekly basis? What if we indexed streetlights that were out, curb cuts that were broken, congestion points, graffiti hotspots as we're starting to do in the city of Santa Fe, or vacant homes as we're doing in the city of Atlanta? This is a whole new frontier for the industry, and it makes us a partner to government in a profoundly new way. So we're very excited about that, and we'll see where it goes. But I think in closing, the future of the industry is all about data, it's all about transparency, and it's all about technology. It's not about hard assets. Hard assets are needed to get from A to B, but they have to be powered by smarter, data-driven decision-making. And that's where we see ourselves at the point of those two. Thank you.
I have to scroll forward a little bit. Hi, my name is Mark Madsen, and I am Vice President of IT at Waste Management. I thank all the presenters for their presentations. I think it's crystal clear that our industry is going through a digital transformation. There's plenty of opportunities for us. I think that there are really three primary technologies that are driving the digitization of our industry: mobility, IoT, and big data and analytics. And when I talk to people about these technologies, mostly everybody understands mobility. Everybody's got a smartphone. We can pretty much work from anywhere. Big data and analytics, people understand the importance of data and analytics, and we've been performing analytics quite a bit for several years. What's different is the amount of data that we're capturing. I think Lisa did a good job highlighting that. And then we get to the IoT portion of what's really digitizing or transforming our industry. I think Tim's definition is pretty accurate. I like to maybe break it down a little bit more simply. In IT, we tend to complicate things. I like to think of Internet of Things as if we want to measure information about a thing. Tim mentioned a sensor. It could be a fuel pump on a truck. It could be the pressure of a waste can. It could be a flare on a landfill. And we want to capture information about that. But once we have the information, the data, we need to turn it into value. So let's take, for example, something that we've done at Waste Management. We've actually taken drones and we've flown them over our landfills, and these drones have surveyed our landfills. The drones report back all kinds of information to us: the GPS location, the height, the depth, and even real-time video. And we've used that real-time video and other information from that drone to really help us operate our landfills a little bit more efficiently. But that's just a small piece of that. Sure, we can help landfill engineers see the landfill differently, or we can see a traffic pattern in a landfill using the video. But the real power of that information is when we begin to think about how else we can use it. A couple of ideas that we've come up with is, how can we take the real-time video from the drones that are over our disposal facilities and relay that information, that video, back to drivers in real time so that drivers can get a preview of what's ahead to come? What if we could combine that video from the drone to the real-time video that we're capturing on the truck and turn that into advanced training for our employees so that they can get a feel for the conditions before they even set out on the route? This is one of my favorite pictures. I think the author did a good job of summarizing the activity or the journey of waste in our industry. We have over 18,000 collection vehicles. We have a fleet of about 28,000 vehicles. We've got onboard computer on every truck, so that's about 18,000 onboard computers. We have over 70,000 routes run per week. We service about 25 million stops per week. We capture over 150 million GPS pings every week. All from this picture here. And what we do is we take all of that data from all of those different work streams or all of those different Internet of Things sources, and all of that data comes to our standard technology platform that really powers waste management and the operations that we run and the customers that we service. Using this technology and using this standard platform, we've been able to do things like centralize our dispatch activities. We've got pockets of dispatch spread throughout the United States, and a dispatcher at anywhere at any time can see a truck on a map, can see where they're located, and can see the status of that truck, whether it's running a route, whether it's idle, whether it's on lunch break. The dispatcher can also change the work that a driver has in real time. We can shift work from one truck to another. And mind you, this can be done from a dispatcher's desk in Phoenix looking at a route that's in Virginia. We've taken this information and we've even connected it to our customer service agents so that when customers call with issues, they can see the same information that our dispatchers can. Quite often, we can assign work to our trucks in real time and adjust the schedule that they have for the rest of the day. This information is also available to our customers on WM.com and through our mobile application. We take that information and we're helping cities become smarter. We're participating in the Smart City initiatives that many of you have talked about this week. It's all relying on the technology that we talked about, which is the Internet of Things. Some of the advanced things that we're doing in this area is we're deploying 360-degree cameras to some of our trucks, and they're recording full-time video of the routes that our drivers run. We're using this video to learn information about the routes that we service in the communities that are around us. Michael mentioned how can we use the truck as a beacon to learn more about us, and that's exactly what we're doing with the 360-degree video that we have in a couple areas. Our customers can also benefit from this information. Using the routing technology that we have, we can actually predict the estimated time that we're going to service a customer well ahead of when we actually service them. And that's not just as simple, we're leaving from point A to point B. We acquired some industrial strength routing software a few years ago. We've been doing this since about 2011. And that software takes into account any predictable delays that might exist in a route. So for example, traffic patterns or accidents, or whether or not drivers have a mandatory break that they have to take, or if we're going to break off and go to a disposal station, how much activity that'll take. We take that all into account, and then we provide our customers with an estimated time to arrive. This is all powered by the same technology platform that I discussed before. There's a couple other interesting things that are happening with the technology platform that we have. We're actually integrating it with our customers, some municipalities and some businesses. They're connecting their CRM system to our CRM system. In some cases, they want to be on the front end of a customer service issue rather than calling us directly. We think that's fine. We've automated that interaction so now that they can receive a customer service request and it can integrate directly with our CRM system. It'll create a ticket for us to go service. We'll push that out to the computer automatically. We'll route the truck there. We'll pick it up and the status will be visible to the front end agent. This prevents them from having to call us and it will also help reduce the amount of time that customers have to wait to have an issue resolved. Another interesting aspect with that platform that we see a lot of customer interest in is we're providing real-time disposal information across all of our disposal facilities. Customers can use the API that we've developed to get that information for sustainability reporting purposes, or if they just want to analyze the data for their own purposes. We have that capability. This is all driven by the same standard platform, and it even contains multiple sources of information across multiple waste streams. So MSW, hazardous, or special waste, or recycling. One final thing to point out with the smart cities is it's certainly possible to connect the platform that we've developed to real-time notification of smart containers throughout the city. When I walked here today, I passed probably about 5 or 10 big belly compactors that are spread throughout the city of New Orleans. All of those compactors have Wi-Fi on them, and they can communicate with trucks as they're going by, or they can connect back to our network, and we can automatically receive pressure status from those containers, and even send a truck out to pick them up. Plus, we can do that with the big containers that we monitor behind stores. We've got about 48,000 compactors, and a good majority of those are being monitored automatically through our technology. Okay, so just moving on, just to talk what we're seeing is a little bit of the future trends of technology, and a lot of this has been discussed, but robotics. Robots are being pursued to various degrees across different aspects of our business, and robotics is nothing new. I think we've all seen RoboCop. I still don't think that the industry's there yet, but I did a search the other day, robot trash cans on YouTube, and I got a result list of 280,000. And the first one was this little robotic trash can that could go from your garage out to the curb and back. So I think every year we make progress in the area of robotics, but it's certainly not there yet to begin replacing humans. But another interesting part that we've seen with robots, which I find fascinating, which is vehicle-to-vehicle communication or machine-to-machine communication. So we've got trucks driving down the street, they're recording video. How can that video be used for the traffic behind us or behind that truck? So I sat in with Third Eye the other day, and they showed a video of a truck that traveled, and then 15 minutes later, that video was being used by another vehicle, and it was altering its route because it had learned through that video that it didn't want to be, the truck didn't want to be in that particular lane. Another interesting use of technology, which there's been a lot of discussion on, which is autonomous vehicles. I even read yesterday that cities are starting to pursue autonomous buses, so having buses in our cities without even a driver behind the wheel. Augmented reality and virtual reality is something that we've been looking at. It's how do we integrate virtual reality with tasks that we're performing? How do we provide a connection there? If we think about the amount of time that when a technician is at a truck and then has to go over to a computer to look something up and go back and forth, it's significant. So is there some technology out there that you could wear a screen on your sleeve and you could actually get information related to the problem that you're trying to fix without having a time switch and go back over to a computer? Another area that we're looking into is remote assistance. So if a mechanic is working on a truck and then somebody 2,000 miles away is an expert of that particular engine, how can we have that remote technician see the problem and help that the local mechanic diagnose it and help resolve it? So I think finally, we've talked about this a lot, but it really does come down to big data and analytics. We have over a petabyte of data that we process at Waste Management. We're capturing millions and millions of pieces of data every day. We're using special technology to help us process this technology like Netezza, Hadoop, or Cassandra, and we're using that technology to help us answer pretty sophisticated questions, things like when will a truck need to be repaired before it breaks down? So in closing, I just want to say that the digital technology is definitely changing our industry. It's here. I've heard a lot of discussion over the past couple of days. Our industry's simple. We just need to pick up the trash. Picking up the trash is table stakes. We have to do more than that. Our customers are starting to compare the best experience they have, no matter the industry. So they're comparing the experience they have somewhere else to the experience we're giving them. And we have to use technology to provide a great experience and to drive our companies forward. So with that, I'm finished. Thank you.
So, first of all, give a big round of applause to the complete audience. Thanks to everybody for putting the presentations together. We have about 15 to 20 minutes of questions and answers, so I'm going to start to take questions from the floor. So I think there's some mics out there, so if anybody wants to kick us off.
Thank you for all your presentations, and I definitely think this is where the industry is going. We have a fleet of about 30 trucks and just went through a massive transition to new trucks. And I say we went from a rotary phone to an iPhone literally overnight. And the piece that I don't think any of us are talking about is how do we prepare the workforce for this? Because you're talking about a very different job. And I don't think this industry is really thinking about how do we train people and prepare them for that. Not only in terms of the technical skills, but you're asking a driver to really become a communications specialist. And anybody that's worked with drivers know they don't tend to be communication specialists. So I'd like to know if you guys have looked at that issue and how you're addressing it. I don't think this is just a waste issue, the waste industry. I think it's an overall societal issue that we have to look at. So,
Mark, I think you have a lot of experience of deploying.
Sure, yes, yeah. Well, it took us about 3 years to deploy our mobile solution to our fleet. And initially, the drivers resisted because they kind of felt that Big Brother was watching them. And we really just took it slowly. So we would start at a hauling site. We would identify some of our more forward-thinking drivers, and then we would train them on the technology. They would run their routes. We would run it in parallel with paper route sheets, oftentimes 2 to 4 weeks. And then it only took, on average, about 2 weeks for them to really see the value of the computer and to get over kind of the Big Brother aspect of it. And then they would talk to the other drivers about it, and it kind of spread organically that it's actually much easier. It's safer for them to use a computer. It's easier for them. They don't have to worry about keeping track of paper. And so now if we ask a driver to run a route without a computer, they complain. So I would just say kind of take it slow, find a couple people who are your leaders, and then get them indoctrinated with the technology, and then they'll spread it.
Michael.
It's a really thoughtful question. I think that's essentially what this is all about. You could have the coolest tech in the world that does a gazillion things, but if no one knows how to use it, or they don't want to, it doesn't matter. And so I really think there are 3 things. Simplicity of the technology itself. Is it easy to use? And do the incentives of using it align for the people who need to use it? So the people you're asking to use it, will it make their job easier, or will it make their job harder? And will it keep them safer? So on those 3 things, we built an app. We didn't build a supercomputer. We built it through the eyes of the driver purposefully so that it wouldn't be something they had to interact with a lot, because we knew then they wouldn't use it. We tried to make it as easy as possible. So our training cycle on this is about 15 to 30 minutes. And we, of course, stick around longer to teach drivers how to use it, but they say, I got it, it's an app. I just hit one button if there's a problem. The way you position the technology is the second thing. Do you position it as something that is going to empower that driver vis-a-vis management, or are you going to be Big Brother? We look at it the first way. So back to the Atlanta example, it was a different driver, but someone had, one of our trainers who's manning our booth downstairs right now was back after a training, and a call came in, because we're integrated with the city CRM system as well. A call came in and said, you know, City of Atlanta, you didn't pick up the trash today. And we had the data there that said, actually, we were at the house, you know, at 7:20. And the driver was in the room and saw that interaction and said, finally, I don't have to go back. The city's got my back on this. They've got the data to prove I was there. So it changed the power dynamic. And the third thing is safety. The pre and post check is a good example. If you have drivers who every day are coming into the shop saying, I really need someone to check the brakes. I really need someone to check the brakes. And it's not happening. Well, God forbid there is an accident. Suddenly there's a paper trail. And data is irrefutable. So I think it's about how you message and keeping it simple.
I would just add one thing with Atlanta to, you know, ditto everything Michael said. Plus, we used a trusted emissary to help approach the waste haulers for the Public Works Department. The Office of Sustainability hired as one of our recycling team members a former hauler. And so he had worked boots on the ground with the hauling team only a few months prior to Rubicon coming on board with the city. So we used him as our outreach, and we were really thoughtful to make sure that we just didn't dump this on them, but we had some thoughtful engagement with the haulers before we started the program, so that was critical.
And just to echo, in the city of Phoenix, we had the same thing. We personalized it with the drivers, understood what their problems were, and helped show them how doing the technology in the trucks and the data gathering improved their everyday lives. So for us, they actually saw it as an equal partnership to say, you know what, you're right. I've been trying to tell my foreman every day that this route is not right, and now you'll be able to prove it. And we did just that. So we're now going through a reorganization of our routes to be able to prove that really we do need more drivers and trucks to collect the waste that we have in our city every day. So it really did show a very unionized area. It was easy to show how this was beneficial to both the city and the drivers and our public, because it became a safe factor as far as saying, you know what, we weren't involved with that accident. You reported the wrong garbage truck. There's a lot of people out there, and we're not the only ones collecting.
Very good. Any other questions from the floor? Don't be shy. I think there's... We have two. We could sing a song as well if...
Mark, you mentioned how Waste Management is using drones to monitor landfills, and I know that many industries, including like the construction industry, are also using drones. However, the expense of the drones, the FAA regulations, and the training that is involved with employees are all huge obstacles for the industry. So what advice may you have for operators who want to start adopting drones into their operation but may not be able to get around these issues?
Sure. I think you do have to work within the regulations. We don't fly them full time every day. We've used them just on occasion, just to fly around the landfill to be able to give us a visibility of that. And in many cases, it's property that we own, so we're operating it within regulations. But we certainly wouldn't pursue it outside of a kind of private environment like that without working within the regulations and working with cities to make sure that we were safely doing that.
Thank you.
Question on user feedback and maybe public feedback. It's a new technology, and people are using it, they're interacting with it, and they're coming up with ideas. How do you incorporate that type of feedback, either for your route drivers or other employees, and then maybe the community at large? It seems like it's going to be an ongoing activity that's going to have to occur and over time and keep people interested and to keep people wanting to use the technology.
Yeah, I mean, AMCS obviously is a pretty big software company. For us, there's a big move in the overall industry to agile development, agile and Scrum development. So what we're trying to do with our customers at this stage is go out there, poll what the requirements are, rate them, and then on a monthly basis develop that into our software. So that approach, that agile software Scrum approach is where the industry is going, and I think it's also key that the technology is broken into microservices so we can change the software on the internet side or on the fast changing side quite agile and quite fast. So the mobile, the internet side or that fast changing side, that has to be very agile and very, very flex to change. So a lot of work is going on that whole development front. I don't know.
I mean, I could quickly add to that. We push out an update to the app every 2 weeks. So again, I think it's reimagining what tech is. It's not big mainframe computers anymore. It's not ideally stuff that you bolt into the truck and that, 6 months later it's antiquated. It's software. So just like your Uber app or your Airbnb app or whatever you're using, Facebook updates every few days, so too does our app. Now, you can't take all feedback equally, right? So certain partners are different. When you're working with a city or a long-term customer, some of those ideas, you have to test them first before you put them out in the market. So I pointed in my slide to that box that said other. So sometimes with cities, we're experimenting with the idea of trying a special thing unique to that city to see if it's real. Does looking for graffiti, is that something we could actually do, or is that a fool's errand? And you try a little bit through experimentation. You pilot, you don't always roll things out through an entire geography. I'm sure you would agree you do things on a limited basis sometimes.
And I'll just add, in the city of Phoenix, it's really more a convenience factors. We have such a large population and such a growing, fast population that it's really convenient. So a lot of our residents and clients that we have, they work odd hours and we're not always open during those hours. So having that convenience factor to proactively remind them of things that they otherwise would have forgotten and prevent them from having additional fees being incurred in their bill. Or being able just to report problems at free will on a mobile app or through their website without having to sit on the phone for 3 or 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question about on the data that's collected. When you take it to on a state level, I know we collect it on a city level, in even companies specific, the data is looked at on a summarized basis, but the potential for double counting of information, say a state wants to know how many tons of recyclables the state is doing by community or by county even. And so the data is submitted to the state, and the issue of double counting of information sometimes can make it invalid. And I guess talking from one company to another company, the systems that are out there, it could be fragmented in how the data is collected and then submitted to a governing body on a broad scale. But anyway, the idea of double counting and being able to relate to the citizens, we're just trying to get a tonnage, a number of as a whole for the state, what we're doing, and by geographic location, so it does have credibility. And again, eliminating double counting, is that something in your considerations?
So can I take that for a second? We obviously sell into a number of different countries. One of the trends we're seeing, and it's been led by the Dutch market probably ahead of anywhere, where they've actually standardized a data brokerage approach, that data into government body is fed in a certain format with a certain standard, with certain rules, and all people involved in the waste and recycling industry has to obey that format. And it's exactly trying to get at that issue that you just highlighted, that double counting or not counting or counting in different ways. So, I think that's an approach to industry, and particularly with this, as this technology comes together, that we're going to have to look probably even at a global effort, to standardize how we send messages, how we communicate with one another, how cross-platforms communicate. We've just invested very heavily in a digital brokerage platform that we've unveiled here in the US this week, but that's what it's about, is actually standardization of sharing of data between interested parties and how we go about that. So for me, I think it's a very important part of the solution as we start to communicate with one another.
And I think that's actually a problem that we've been dealing with for years. So I would say just because it's coming from a technology platform in real time doesn't mean that the data has to be governed less. So my advice to avoid double counting is to always know the source of where the information's coming from. And the source needs to know the source, and you have to, it's kind of like a chain of custody that you have to do for the data. And then people who are compiling the reports, say at the state level, need to know that that data is unique, it's not duplicate, and then report that with progress. But I would say even that issue existed 5 years ago. How do you avoid duplicate spreadsheets, for example? I think to Jimmy's point, as we begin to automate the data collection, we capture the weight of every truck that comes across every scale. We assign uniqueness to that data, and then that uniqueness goes to the entity that requested it. So as long as we're adhering to uniqueness across that, it would minimize that possibility.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the?
Sure. Just was most of the examples that you've given have been more efficiency, safety, optimization, and we've talked about this zero waste goal and proceeding to higher and higher diversion, and it's just I haven't heard, the issues of food waste, of glass contamination and mixed recyclables, sort of the core issues around increasing diversion rates and having markets for them. Where does that fit, or where do you see the data that you're getting kind of leading to truly higher diversion rates? Doesn't it have to include policy and infrastructure as well, or? So
again, I'm going to take some pieces of this, some experience in different markets. I think we're seeing on the tech truck side some interesting trends in led maybe in the likes of Sweden and some of these markets, particularly around on-scale technology in the trucks, charged by weight by customer for waste, and also paying for recycling per collection has a huge change in behaviour. Probably you're talking about 20 to 30% change in behaviour of the customer. So markets like Ireland, Sweden, some of these markets are completely gone pay by throw, pay by weight. We're also seeing a pretty big change in the manufacturing type industries where they want to be completely connected to the waste industry, understand what materials are coming out of their facility, understand exactly the makeup of that materials, and understand how they can feed that material back into their manufacturing facility. So that's another change that we're seeing. Again, in some of the more advanced recycling markets are really driving that quite heavily. So we're seeing them, again, that's IoT, interconnectivity of data from the waste hauler or collector to the actual manufacturer, and using that data to make manufacturing decisions about too much material being ready now, how can I move that material back in? There are two big ones we're seeing live out there in markets already.
Yeah, and I can speak to that from Phoenix. We are actually using the data to incentivize our residents to recycle more. So we've partnered with a vendor who is awarding points, and they can redeem those points for things happening in the city, whether it be event tickets or gift cards or whatever the case is. they're incentivized by recycling more. And so we're using our data that we collect on how many times we pick up in a neighborhood, and we award points based on neighborhoods and then our tonnage weights. So it's more incentivizing them to want to change their behavior. We can also then in the future, as we add like Cisco technology and these sensors, we can start to identify maybe through cameras, oh, look, we just had all this waste come in and there was 3% contamination in this neighborhood versus this one that's 10. So maybe we can compete amongst neighbors and increase that recycling rate.
So the Rubicon data will help us identify contamination areas, residents where people are putting organic waste in the recycling and glass. We're trying to segregate the glass. So specifically to the glass issue right now, we've been trying to identify some vendors we can work with who will take the glass and will segregate it and have separate collection sites, because really the only way we can make glass profitable, and we're not in the recycling business to make a profit, but it would be nice if we'd have a better rate of return, which would then be invested back into our recycling efforts. But glass is really driving down, as everyone knows, the cost of our paper and our cardboard recycling commodities. So the more we can segregate the glass, the better. And we've been seeking a solution. We finally got a glass company that's interested in coming to Atlanta. We found a site for them. And it's just a matter of finding locations where we can set up the separate recycling centers just for the glass. So that's what we're working towards. And then with regard to the organic waste, we've got an RFI that's already been put out seeking solutions on waste to energy that would include composting. And we've taken all that information from the RFI. The data that Rubicon's collecting is going to be helpful for us to prepare our RFP. So we will be looking in the next year, putting out a RFP to have a waste to energy facility that would address mostly the organic waste, which is about 30% of our landfill right now and a huge contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions.
I guess just a final word on trying to connect for you what the Rubicon tech does to actually get the data over. When we started to work with the city, they were doing a contamination study based by quadrant, right? Cutting the city into 4 little slices and looking at the rate there. Now you can do it by truck and therefore by neighborhood. And we're working at how do you do it by household. And there was a panel, I believe yesterday, where a question went to our CEO that said, aren't citizens going to be worried that you're kind of looking into their garbage? Well, no, because government's been looking into their garbage for years. The difference is they used to be putting a sticker on the garbage pail that said your recycling is contaminated. Now with our technology and others, I'm sure, up on this stage, we can send them an email or a text. So if they're away on vacation, instead of it sitting there for 2 weeks and they forget about it, in real time we can help change that behavior. Is that an enforcement opportunity? Does the city make money and enforce on that? Or does the city educate on that? Is it a 3 strikes and you're out sort of rule? It's a very intimate relationship all of a sudden between the city and a homeowner to try to change behavior and improve rates. We've even developed something called Rubicon Snap, where we take a picture of the top of the garbage, and through machine learning over time with the thousands of photos of garbage that we've taken, we've made the dumpster dive thing of the past, and we could do it through technology.
Yeah, just finally, we take over 100,000 photographs a week right now, and some of those photographs are obviously of contamination, and we can take those photographs and we can look at it and help educate the originator of that contamination so that it can be minimized and hopefully be used in a way that helps us achieve our diversion goals.
Perfect. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? No. So I have a couple of questions. I suppose one, Rubicon, on the Rubicon front, you see yourselves as the Uber for waste, or that disruptive technology in the industry, and it's probably for yourself and Mark of how does a company like Waste Management counteract a technology disturbance like Rubicon from a business model point of view, or is that something that bothers waste management? Or, you look at Uber, completely changed the waste industry. The industry's quite old. It's traditional. What's the thing that's going to change the industry on its head? Is it Rubicon or some other technology that's going to come along?
You're stirring the pot there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wish I knew every answer to that question, which is what's going to disrupt the industry that we're in.
It's something that keeps you awake at night, or...
Well, I think providing our customers with the service that they need is what keeps us up at night. And if their needs are migrating more towards an on-demand model, then we're going to pursue that on-demand model. We have that ability with our software right now. If you call right now and you need a pickup today, we can send that either to a truck in our network or to a truck outside of our network, and we can service that customer today. And then we can provide all the reporting capabilities around that. So it's a capability we have. We have some customers who use it, but a majority of them right now don't. I think what we have to do is just be flexible in our pursuit of technology. And look to leverage what's being offered in the industry so we can serve our customers the best way that they need to be.
Thank you, Mark.
Am I supposed to respond? That was a very thoughtful answer. I used to work at Uber, full disclosure, so the label of the Uber for waste or recycling wasn't one that we placed on ourselves, but one that the media did. And I think that largely comes from the fact that we do have an on-demand option, and there are a number of people from Uber, such as myself, who work there. But there's a big distinction, and it's so important, between what we do and what Uber does. We are looking to disrupt a model. We're looking to move a society away from landfills. That is fundamentally different. But we're not looking to disrupt government. We're up here partnering with government. Our incentives are aligned towards those environmental and societal and quality of life goals. And that is fundamentally different than a company like Uber. And that's not a good or bad thing. It's just a distinction. There's nothing vague in terms of the legality or the regulatory turf on which we stand as a business. We empower small independent haulers to build their book of business. We create a family among them through our purchasing consortium, through our technology. It's just a little bit different than the Uber model.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
I just want to add that cities more and more are taking on these really aggressive goals. You've got zero waste. We've got zero waste. We've got 90% diversion goal. And you're not going to get that with the old model of filling up landfills. So the model of trying to divert as much waste as possible, put it into the recycling and the secondary market or composting, that's the future. That's the way we have to go. And I'm part of the U.S. Sustainability Directors Network, and we're growing by the hundreds every year. Cities across the country are getting sustainability directors, and you're going to be seeing more and more resilience directors who are looking at this even in a broader scope, in a global scope, and that's the trend. So you've got to get to the zero waste, and that means doing away with the old model of filling up landfills.
Thank you. So one last question I have for probably the whole panel. No, we're probably at, as I would say, phase 1 or phase 2 of gathering the data, analysing it manually, looking at it point to point. Like the next phase I believe we're going to go through is automation. And you look at any technology report, they talk about one of the overall industries is going to go through a lot of automation, and particularly office automation. Not just the bin truck or recycling, picking, or whatever. It's going to be office automation where on-the-fly decisions are made by smart computing and automating the process. What's your view on that, and how? Because the industry is pretty labor-intensive. It's pretty, there's a lot of opportunity in this industry for automation, and particularly as we get connected. But there's also a lot of social implications for that as we move into that world. We probably will have less people working in call centers. We will maybe have automated trucks and won't need drivers. We won't have people working in picking stations and recycling lines anymore. What's your view on that, or how real is that, and how soon is that? So, who wants to take that big question? Mark, I'm going to start now there. You look keen.
So what's my view on that? I think we're going to see progress in different areas at a different speed. So, and I think that we see some of it today. There's something called robotic processing automation, RPA, which is largely used in a business process outsourcing area where you've got to go through a manual task of entering data. There's a way to automate that and simulate a human. We can do that today. That's being done in the industry today. But then moving from that all the way to autonomous vehicles, I think we're still years away from that.
The likes of landfills, and a landfill is pretty easy. Get autonomous now with the rollers in there.
It's easy.
They have recycling facilities. They're moving.
Sure, I think those are all possibilities. It's nothing that we're seeing happening in the short term, but we definitely are watching it, and we're talking to vendors and suppliers who have that technology and working, and more so having discussions right now, but working with them on the development of some of those technologies.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm entirely qualified to answer this, but in my new role with the Resilience platform, we are looking at entrepreneurship, pathways to economic prosperity. And so, and my involvement with the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities program has been since January, so I'm still new in this role. But we are looking at what are we doing with the workforce that's being displaced by technology. That's one of the areas we're exploring. And the reality is you can seek training and re-education for folks who are being displaced out of their jobs, but some people who are at certain points in their career, it's almost too late to do that retraining, or people just don't have that skill set. So there are going to be a certain amount of people who are displaced. And I just finished reading a book called Raising the Floor, which I highly recommend if anyone's interested in this topic. And they talk about universal basic income and how some countries are exploring the fact that maybe you just need to pay people a set amount of money, knowing that some folks are going to be displaced and aren't going to have the jobs that are there currently. But a lot of it is just as we're going through these innovative technologies, we really need to be thoughtful about the big picture, that people are going to be displaced. So how do you manage that? How do cities manage that? Maybe a universal basic income isn't the answer. Maybe it is re-education, but we're going to have to start thinking about it.
Agreed.
So what I'll say from the Cisco side, I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on this industry and autonomous multi-ton trash trucks barreling down the highway. But I know if you say you're going to do that, the public's going to have some thoughts on it. And what we heard on a lot of the questions was not about technology, it was more about the response of humans to this. And whether you're talking about this industry or a lot of the others that have been disrupted, the political climate and the people impact is very important and will stop a technology rollout much more than a bug or a hacker ever could. And when you talk about retraining workforce development, that's actually another big investment area for us. We have the world's largest online classroom with almost 2 million students. It's the Cisco Networking Academy, and a lot of other companies do things like this to help retrain the workforce sort of on demand, virtually in schools and in a lot of places. So we've got a lot of success stories, a little bit outside the scope of what we're talking about here today, but with the Department of Economic Security in Arizona, helping take people that are getting state aid and are unemployed and provide them jobs that might be in the technology industry. And we've got a few early wins with individuals. So I do think it is on us as technologists when you disrupt an industry to look at the personal impact and how that same technology that's disrupting a life can help it in a positive way.
Thank you, Jim. I think that is it. So can I get a good warm welcome or a fellowship for the whole panel? Thanks for everybody that stayed around. We'll be here for 10 minutes post. If anybody wants to come and talk or chat about anything direct. And again, thank you for staying so late. Thank you.